Good Tuesday morning, Market Chameleons, and those joining for the first time. Thanks for coming by and checking out the Market Chameleon pre-market show without our missing Dimitri Pargamonic, who's away on vacation for 2 weeks. But because of Chameleon demand, we've decided to try to do as many shows in those 2 weeks as we can. Before we get started and my introduction of the special guest host, let's start with the disclaimer. Neither Market Chameleon nor anyone involved in this show is an investment advisor. So please read the disclaimer. If you need an advisor, please contact one. All our information is for informational purposes only. So take one more look at that disclaimer and let me announce our special guest all the way from, I don't know, Rob, is it cold or is it beautiful in Chicago today? I'm guessing it's pretty nice in Chicago. Dan Passarelli. How you doing, Dan?
Hey, I'm doing great. How are you, Will? It is a beautiful day here in the Windy City.
Yeah, we have quite a few chameleons in Chicago. Probably you brought some to the show. We brought some. Dan's been a regular contributor and friend of the chameleon community for years now. It's been a long time, which is awesome. Actually, some of the chameleons were guessing you may be Tom Sosnoff as a guest. I love that. He didn't return my emails.
But maybe he finally scheduled that haircut that he's been waiting a decade to.
So why don't you, just for those, we do have a couple new faces on the show. For those who don't know, why don't you tell the chameleon community or remind the chameleon community a little bit of your background?
Yeah, so once again, I'm Dan Passarelli, and I've been in the options industry for 30 years now. Oh my God, I'm freaking old. But yeah, started down on the floor of the exchange as a runner in 1993, worked my way up to becoming one of the biggest traders in my PID for a while. And then let's see, in 2008, so I guess that's 15 years ago, we started Market Taker Mentoring, which is a leader in option trader education. We have student traders in over 50 countries, and that is our mission.
So now I know with your well, one of the things that we've talked about on the show before, and one program you have is earnings. I know we're not in the midst of earnings season, though there are earnings going on all the time. When it's not earnings season, I know, because you have a chat room, you have all sorts of different things. Like, what are you looking at, during a non-earnings cycle? Are you constantly scanning the market, looking for ideas, do you do it? I mean, we've never actually discussed this, so it would be interesting for me. I wonder what goes on in the chat room when it's not like an earnings cycle. What are the Dan Passarelli and his community communicating about? Are there any interesting tidbits that you want to share?
Yeah, we have a couple of things. We have a group coaching class, which is every morning, actually immediately following this show, where John Kamisik, who's our head coach, shares trade ideas that he hunts down every day in the market. And the other thing that I do is, having a busy schedule, teaching classes and working one-on-one with student traders. I needed to simplify my trading. So what I did is I spent a few years now working on these scanners in conjunction with some of my friends at the CBOE that identifies certain trade setups when a professional trader goes into the market and trades them. And I get those signals live, real time, like literally down to the sub 1 second. And then when I get those signals that a big trade went up, and I can tell you what those are in a second, then I just go in and I rescreen them to see if if I like it, if it meets our proprietary criteria.
Yeah, so they give you the starting point to do your research and make sure there's nothing that you worry about when you look at that trade. And if it's something you want to put on, you put it on.
Yep, exactly. And we do that we've got a short squeeze scanner, which we've actually been seeing some good short squeezes lately, again, after a long break from not seeing them. A credit spread scanner, a time spread scanner, and a wing spread scanner. And we get trade triggers on each one of those 4 setups. And man, that keeps me busy.
Yeah, I'm sure it does. Now, how if someone in the community wants to get in touch with Dan, I know Rob said he at one time was a subscriber, really liked the information, was very helpful. How does someone subscribe or get in touch with Dan Passarelli or the people at MarkeChameleon Mentoring?
Yeah. So just go to, you can go to our website, which is MarketTaker.com. So market like stock market, taker like take what is rightfully yours, 2 T's in a row. Second T is for theta, MarketTaker.com. And you can go to the top right and click join free. And that'll give you some of our, beginner classes. For right now, we're actually letting you use our chat room for free, which is really, really valuable. And, for those of you who are interested in our group coaching class, we can even, I don't know, should I give them
you can get, I mean, the floor is open. They can ask you any questions. You can give them anything you want. I'm putting a link to your site I just grabbed off the internet into the chat. So yeah, let the chameleons know anything you want. We're here to help. If you know, so.
Okay. Yeah. So if you're looking for trade ideas on a daily basis, we have a class, and we're actually going to have a special guest teaching that class for the next few days, because our big event, our big in-person retreat is we're flying out tomorrow to California. But just go to MarketTaker.com/99 and you can get a $99 trial for a month of our group coaching.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah.
Now, what goes on at these trials? Someone's asking in the chat, like what will be discussed? Is it an open forum, or is it a skill set you build upon? How does it work actually?
It's like an earn while you learn style class. So it's an hour a day, right after this show, every day. And usually our head coach, John Kamisik, he opens up his trading platform and he finds trades live real time. I mean, I say finds them real time. Literally, he spends about 3 hours a day, a couple hours before the open, an hour after the close every day, finding literally the best option trade setups in the market. And he reveals them during that class. And the cool thing about it is that it's not just like an alert service where it's like, here, go trade this trade, trust me. It's here's the trade setup. Here's why I like that trade setup. Here's the technicals I relied on. Here's why I'm selecting this expiration and this strike. So you get the trade idea, you get the management plan along with it, and you learn all along because you're getting the rationale behind the trade. So it's our most popular live subscription class for sure.
That's great. We did it was a question. I can't find it now. How did you do any conferences or any discussions with other people in the, like, I know someone just brought up Tony Zhang, different platforms. I think you do still, I know we have some of your clients use MarkeChameleon. I guess maybe they're asking, what do you use MarkeChameleon for? The tool sets. It was something within the earnings cycle, right? The calendar. I forget exactly, but
yeah, the main thing that I use it for a number of things, but I use MarkeChameleon largely for earnings for a couple of reasons. One is it's really convenient the way that MarkeChameleon lays out who has earnings when, and I'm able to kind of triage it a little bit and go by the market cap of the company, or what do you do it by? I forget if it's volume or open interest at this point. I haven't looked at it in a couple of weeks because it's not earnings season. But it's really easy to identify what stocks have earnings coming out after the close today or before the open tomorrow. But then also MarkeChameleon has really great data. And so I'm able to very easily look and see what the earnings gaps were on the previous earnings from the past 2 years, because it's important to look at it from where the market closed before earnings to where the market opens after earnings, after the earnings conference call, which is different than close to close. And so it's just laid out really easily, really perfectly for how our system identifies the earnings trades.
Very cool. Very cool. I was talking, I don't know if you've ever met Jay Soloff, but he's a writer and was an options trader on the CBOE, but he was on yesterday, and we were talking a little bit about zero DTE options. Is that something you or any of your educators, or I'm assuming you're seeing the volume numbers. Do you have any thoughts on 0 days today expirations and trading those products?
I do. The zero DTE trade is something that I trade on a fairly regular basis, because there are many advantages. First of all, they're very short-term trades. You can get into them. What I do is typically they're 1 DTE. I tend to put them on the close and then hold them through the close the next day. So almost 0 DTE.
Yeah, that's pretty close. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what I tend to do. And I'm actually, I've got some things in the works with 0 DTE that is going to be really, really helpful. First of all, to me, but also for our student traders, working on something really, really great there.
Yeah, it is. The volume numbers are really interesting. It makes you wonder, where the opportunities are and maybe how individuals may be able to participate in these 0 DTEs.
Yeah, you can use a little bit of math, look at some standard deviations, and we've got a couple of methodologies and systems. It would take a little bit longer than we have to really go into everything involved there, but yeah, they can be really, really super powerful. And within the next couple of months, probably within the next 3 months, I plan on rolling out a 0 DTE offering. That's sort of our methodology for doing it. And oh man, it's great.
That's awesome. Well, listen, we're 15 minutes in, Chameleon community. If you have any questions for Dan, speak now. I know we have a little bit of a delay. Dan, you want to take a guess on who I put it out there? You either can get a vintage Chameleon cup or a vintage MarkeChameleon t-shirt. If you guess right, I'm having a guest host later in the week after you, and they're trying to guess who it may be. You get, take a second, you get one guess. Well, if you think about it while you're thinking about this question, I'm getting a question from Rob, who's also in Chicago. So, Will, can Dan explain a bit of how he sets the sell side in a vertical or calendar trade? Does he use standard deviations, chart patterns, etc.?
Okay, great. So it's a little different for calendars as it is for verticals. So if it's a vertical credit spread, I don't use standard deviation, which I know a lot of people do, but using standard deviation can be a little tricky unless you really apply some more complicated math to it, because the way the options pricing model works is the implied volatility is based off standard deviation. And so if you believe that the implied volatility is correct, then it's priced in, and the options are priced exactly fair, meaning there's no advantage to that trade. So like, I'm a big believer from, my experience on the trading floor and, just sort of studying options and game theory and various gambling, methodologies, that in order to make any trade, you have to have some sort of an edge. Like we can't just rely on guessing right, all the time. We need to have like a quantifiable, verifiable edge. And so if we use standard deviation, and if we believe that implied volatility is fairly priced, which is definitely a great discussion point, there's not an edge. There's just not. There might be a slight, there's not an edge. So what I do is I use supports and resistance, because that gives me a little bit of a technical edge. That's the first thing I use is support and resistance. It gives me a little bit of a technical edge because that's where, for support, that's where the buyers happen to be in the past. For resistance, that's where the sellers happen to be in the past. Not guaranteed to hold, but support and resistance is so ubiquitously used because it tends to hold more often than not. And so we literally get like a verifiable edge doing it that way. Now, the other side of that is because implied volatility usually is not exactly fairly priced. We need to get on the side of measuring that and only putting on credit spreads when implied volatility is overpriced. So then on top of the technical edge, we also get a volatility edge that we can literally measure that to the penny of what that is. And that really adds up. That goes from a coin toss game being 50-50 to somebody sticking a little piece of gum on one side and weighing it down and literally putting the odds in your favor.
That's so true, and awesome information, Dan. Lawrence asking, isn't standard deviation a quantifiable data? Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, well, yes, it is, but the option prices are based off that. So what's the best way to, so basically here, okay, so we'll get a little bit more advanced because I know you tend to attract a sharper audience. If I were to buy, say, a straddle, right, on whatever stock at the money straddle, completely delta neutral, and I buy that straddle at a 30 volatility. If between now and if I just hold that straddle until expiration, if at expiration the implied volatility or the actual volatility of the stock ends up being 30, which means the implied volatility was correct, which means, the standard deviation priced into the options equaled the standard deviation of the actual stock, I would break even on that straddle. Like meaning the options ended up being fairly priced. Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, standard deviation is quantifiable, but like, that's just the beginning of the conversation. If that standard deviation is accurately priced into the options, it takes away all your edge. And if you don't look to see if the implied volatility is overpriced or underpriced, then not only are you disregarding any possibility for edge, but you probably end up on the wrong side of it more often than not. So the way I like to do it is to take that standard deviation that is measurable and measure it and determine if the implied volatility is over or underpriced and only sell credit spreads, or the short option and time spreads. That's a little bit of a more complicated conversation, so that I'm literally using that quantifiable standard deviation in my favor. Just saying, oh, hey, I'll sell the call at one standard deviation out. Okay, well, what does that mean? Like, are the options priced to be one standard deviation out, or are they priced higher? Are they priced lower? Like, that is the difference between checkers and chess. That is where traders can really get their edge, and it's a game changer. It makes a huge, huge difference. And that's That's one of the main things that we teach at Market Taker is this like professional trader sort of edge-based trading, so that you're only trading with an advantage.
That's super helpful, Dan. One last thing, someone mentioned, it may have been Laurent, a podcast. I don't know. He said he enjoyed your podcast. Do you do a podcast or what did he call it? I forget. There's so much in the chat. It's called Options Jive. Do you have a podcast called Options Jive? I've never heard of that, but if you wanted to plug it or talk about it, someone mentioned it in the chat, so I figured I would throw it out there for you.
I'm a co-host on a podcast called Options Boot Camp.
All right.
It's very popular podcast for option traders. I don't know if it's the most popular, but it's up there. And yeah, we do it once a week. We do it live on Wednesdays, but you just go back and binge them. That's what I do with podcasts. I'll just, I'm a big nerd. I just start at the beginning, of whatever topic I'm interested in and just go through all the podcasts. So
I got that. I see that, and I will put it in the link, Dan, well, I'm not starting from one because I can't do that because there's so many. But I'll put the link to the podcast in the chat so everyone can take a look at that. Dan, as always, thank you very much, my friend, coming on, co-host, and letting the Chameleons chat a little bit in the YouTube. Filling in for Dimitri for a day. He's away 2 weeks. I hope you're going to have a good vacation at some point in this summer. And thank you very much, my friend.
Yeah, thank you. It was great to be here. And thanks to the audience for having me.
All right. Awesome job, Dan. As always, Chameleons, I will not be on tomorrow. We'll be coming back with a special guest host. Email me at williammcbride@gmail.com if you have any guesses, and that goes for you too, Dan, on who the guest host will be for the next week. I'll give one hint on out the door. It's coming all the way from Costa